Hey everybody, Mr. the Fanboy here. This is my thoughts on the passing of Rowdy Roddy Piper, who of course died July. What was the date again? Um, July 31st, 2015 of this year. Um, and of course his death has been trending all over Twitter. So I wasn't gonna do a video on this, but I decided to do a video talking about my history, talking about my memories of Rowdy Roddy Piper. To tell you the truth, if one of the reasons when he died at first, I was sad, but I really wasn't that sad. It didn't ruin my day. Kind of like when Dusty Rhodes died, which was really sad. It didn't ruin my day like it did when Dusty Rhodes died, or earlier this year when I didn't do a video on this, but Perio Aguayo Jr., the Lucha Libre wrestler, when they died, I wasn't as sad as I was here because Piper in his last Piper in his last days, in his last years, I didn't like him. And one of the reasons I didn't like, the main reason I didn't like Roddy Piper is he kept tainting his awesome legacy, which I'm about to talk about in a minute. But right now I'm gonna talk about the negative first. I'm gonna get the negative out the way first. Piper, he kept tainting his legacy with these appearances. First, it was that awful WrestleMania 25 match with Chris Jericho versus him, Snuka, and Steamboat. And Ricky Steamboat saved the match that at that garbage WrestleMania 25. Then before that, I remember him making an appearance as a voting opponent. I think it was him, Goldust, and the Honky Tonk Man. The winner of the vote would face Santino Marella at Cyber Sunday. Because by this point, I want to see the new guys in WWE. I want to see the new talent. 2000 mid 2008. That's when WWE started sucking. I want to see the new guys, and instead, it was pretty much the same guys at the top. No one really knew was coming up, and WWE was once again relying on these past legends to get money. And by this point, I was really sick of them. I was really sick of them. Then come two, then that's where it started. 2008. Then 2009, the atrocious handicap match at WrestleMania 25 with Jericho. Then of course, then of course, more recently on Raw 3 years ago, him and Cyndi Lauper embarrassing and burying the hell out of one of my favorite wrestlers in WWE currently, and that's Heath Slater. Heath Slater. But that's more Vince McMahon and Triple H and the creative team more so than Rowdy Piper. He was just trying to return to WWE. So of course I didn't care or like Roddy Piper in his last years because my opinion, he was tarnishing his awesome legacy. But now for the positive. Of course, my first exposure to Roddy Piper, of course, was WWE and WCW in the mid to late 90s. Of course, in WWE, he had that awesome feud with Goldust, which led to one of the very first hardcore matches by WWE, the Hollywood Backyard Brawl, and I just remember loving Roddy Piper. He was crazy and rowdy, like his name, and I wanted to be like that. Whenever I got into street fights with people, I would imitate his moves and go nuts and beat and fight people I usually lost, but I wanted to be rowdy and crazy like him and Pillman. I wanted to be rowdy and loose cannon like them, and I wanted to be like that when I was a kid. So I was hugely a fan of Rowdy Piper for his rowdiness in the ring, and a great wrestler. A great wrestler. He had several classic matches. When he left the WWE to WCW, he had several classic matches with Hulk Hogan, who was now the heel, and Piper was the face, which is interesting when you go back and watch the 80s, which I later did. And of course, in the 80s, it was interesting seeing Piper, who for as long as I had been watching wrestling at that time, had always been a face, was a heel here, having a, my opinion, I don't like celebrity matches, but having a classic match, classic tag team match with it was Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful, taking on Mr. T and Hulk Hogan. And I hate celebrity matches, but this right here was one of my favorite. And I love WrestleMania 1. And this right here was an awesome main event. And Piper made Mr. T look good. Then, of course, a year later, Roddy Piper and Mr. T, the boxing match where the referee goes down and Piper takes Mr. T up in the air and slams him and starts tackling. And Mr. T beats him at the real fight. I thought that stuff was real until I got older and read Hulk Hogan's book. But that stuff was awesome. Then beating the Mountie for the Intercontinental Championship, awesome. Then his great showing in the 1992 Royal Rumble where Ric Flair survived all those guys, came in at number 3 and surprisingly won the Royal Rumble. Then, of course, WrestleMania 8, another favorite WrestleMania of mine. His classic Intercontinental title match with Bret the Hitman Hart. And then, of course, there's more, his, the classic match with Bret the Hitman Hart. And then, of course, his match with, these are, classic, Roddy Piper moments for me. Then of course he made an appearance at an Ultimate Pro Wrestling show, giving a speech to the fans talking about his career. Then of course before that he made a reappearance as a heel. He originally at WrestleMania 19 he originally came as a face, but then turned on Hogan by hitting him with the weapon. Then he formed a tag team with Sean O'Haire. We had a awesome match with Eddie Guerrero and Tajiri. Then of course he got released. According to Wikipedia, he got released after he had an interview exposing the dark side of professional wrestling. Then of course then of course he appeared in early TNA, reigniting his feud with Vince Russo, which started in WCW. Then of course he made another special appearance at the very first 3-hour TNA pay-per-view, Victory Road, where he gave a speech to the fans and tried to bury the hatchet with Snuka and his family. And here Kid Cash came out and mocked him, calling him old, calling both of them old. A fight ensues, and Sajay Dutt comes to the rescue. Then he makes another appearance refereeing a match between Hardy and Scott Hall at Final Resolution 2005. Then of course he makes another appearance. He leaves and makes another appearance at WrestleMania 21, helping WrestleMania 21 in the in a Piper Pit segment with Carlitos Caribbean Cool and Stone Cold Steve Austin, where he received a stunner. Awesome moment here. Then later that year, I think he was one of the legends who beat up Rob Conway, who was insulting the legends. He was among the legends, and that's the last time I really cared to see Piper. After this, I want to see the new guys. I didn't care to see Piper and them anymore. So after this, this is when I stopped caring about Piper. But you saw all those awesome moments and memories of Piper, and this guy was legitimately tough too. He was an amateur wrestler and a boxer. He was an amateur wrestler and boxer. And a judo practitioner too. So this guy was legitimately tough, and he started wrestling at 14 years old. And of course, another awesome match was the match with him and Greg Valentine. And I really didn't care much for this, but this was another awesome match. This was another memorable match he had where he put the sleeper hold on when he put the sleeper hold on Adrian Adonis, and him and Brutus Bar Beefcake cut Adrian Adonis's hair, and then of course he had the match, another match I enjoyed at WrestleMania 6 1990. He had a match with Bad News Allen where he infamously painted himself half black. Yeah, so that's that's W. So yeah, that's my history of Rowdy Roddy Piper. I'm now saddened by his loss. Saddened by his loss. It is true what Off the Rope show said about how you should cherish these legends while they're still here, because you never know when they're gonna like die or something like that. But now that he is dead, it's also that true saying, you don't appreciate something until it's gone. And in Piper's last days, like I said, I hated him because he tarnished his awesome legacy with those atrocious with these appearances in WWE, including that atrocious match at WrestleMania 25, which in my opinion is one of the worst WrestleManias I've ever seen. But this was right here was my thoughts on this was my thoughts on this was my thoughts in tribute to Rowdy Roddy Piper. All right, Dugout.